All right, Sam. It's good to have you, brother. How you doing? How you doing today?
Good, man. How you doing?
Yeah. This is going to be very conversational, and it's been cool. I'm excited to have you on to
Mhm,
get your experience about um, Asian masculinity, doing men's work in
mhm,
general, being Asian American,
mhm,
and talking about these deeper things. So I really appreciate you coming on to the
mhm.
show.
For sure, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Those topics yeah, I'm really excited to talk about all that. So, yeah.
Yes. Um, to be completely honest, I'm being present for myself and am a little tired today too. So
Mhm.
I'm just kind of
Okay.
my body is physically feeling a little like tension in the back of my spinal area,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
emotionally I am grateful. I am
mhm,
excited
mhm,
to get into these topics that I think a lot of, for me at least, growing up as an Asian American man, not really like heard much about, or at least
mhm,
had the space to explore. So
mhm.
yeah, thank you for taking the time.
For sure. Yeah. No, thanks. Yeah. I was saying before we started, yeah, I'm feeling might be getting sick or something, but when I get on a call, when I do a coaching, I turn on and then like later I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm feeling good right now,
I
but
feel that.
yeah, later maybe.
I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. For those who don't know you as much,
Hmm.
share a bit about like your experience and a lot of like what got you here in doing this work with men and especially with Asian Americans.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a long story, but basically, I just got into psychology pretty early. Studied it in undergrad, and then went to grad school. In undergrad, I was like a researcher. I was like a cognitive neuroscience geek. I loved neuroscience, so I was super passionate about it. And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm gonna get a degree. It was like I fucking loved it. I like loved psychology. And so just naturally wanted to go to grad school, and so I got my master's in counseling, and it was kind of like an alternative, like holistic program. They integrate Eastern spirituality and Western psychology. So yeah, really grateful for that. And then yeah, that just catalyzed a huge journey for me. That was where I got the education you're talking about with like how to be a human being, basically,
Right.
but like also be a man and be Asian and all that stuff. Growing up Asian, I got all that training. Not the Asian piece as much, but the how to human kind of thing
Yeah.
uh, in grad school. So that was I got lucky. I went to a really good grad school, um, and yeah, picked up spirituality, meditation. Did that really intensely for like probably 10 years in as alongside psychology stuff. And yeah, the Asian piece is kind of interesting because that was very like Western Sammy. I used to call Sammy, but like Western Sammy. Um, I grew up very Korean. I had a very traditional family, immigrants, grew up with a big Korean community, but I left that around 18 or 19. And then I just started hanging out with white people, just doing academia. But late 20s, I started to be like, oh, okay, like, hey, what's up with, like, where are all the Asian people at? Where's so I started to inquire more into that and get in touch with my roots, and I studied some more like traditional styles of Zen and things like that kind of got me connected to that, to like my ancestry, I think. But yeah, it's hard to find Asian people in this type of work or field, and so yeah, that's kind of a separate thing. But and then the men's work was kind of a separate thing too, where I just started doing men's work, and I was like, my dad was not very um, a good role model, and so I was looking for ways to work with my masculine energy and my masculinity and being a man, and I found this organization called Sacred Sons, and I worked with them and did some trainings. I did all their workshops, and it was just amazing what that experience was. Even it's different when you do it with just men. So
Mm.
yeah, I ended up becoming a facilitator, certified facilitator through them, and yeah. So now I'm just kind of weaving all those different pieces together. You know, I'm not a therapist. I was practicing therapy for a while, but I'm not a therapist anymore. And bringing what I've learned from mental health, what I've learned from therapy school, what I've learned from meditation, what I've learned doing men's work, and just me growing up Asian, all that stuff is like coming together now to support the Asian community. So, um, yeah,
I love that. I love that, and I'd love to dive into each of those areas.
for sure.
This is something that really is for some reason such a missing avenue for
Hmm.
not only Asian Americans but especially men. And I know I've absorbed a lot of that. Um, Call it a stigma or call it a way of being that restricted me from really identifying what is it I'm even feeling, and then can I
Hmm.
express that, can I communicate that to someone without feeling less of a man or weak
Hmm.
or quote unquote gay, right? Like all
Hmm.
these things that limited my own expression. So
Hmm.
I think this is really important work that you're in,
Hmm.
and I know that that's held me back in so many other areas of my life that I before would have not noticed, or before, like what since someone did emotions or have a role in how I perform or what I accomplish in my life,
For
right?
sure.
um so
Yeah.
what we oh yeah, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I can, but yeah,
Yeah.
you can go ahead. It
Okay.
just, I agree. I agree. It's like this. It's like this thing that's underneath the surface that's affecting every area of our lives,
Yeah.
yet we aren't willing to acknowledge that, especially as men, but living in patriarchal
Yeah.
systems and capitalistic, it's like, where is the space? Even calling mental health, it's like, for me, it's really about emotions, it's like the thoughts come from a lot of our beliefs, our emotions, our past experiences,
Mm.
so yeah, I agree with you, 100%, 1,000%, man. That's
Yeah.
yeah, it's everywhere. It's everything, really. Emotions. Yeah.
Right. And I'd love to get into like your personal experience was with all of that too. But before we do, we like to ask all of our guests, what
Hmm.
does being a badass Asian dude mean to you?
Hmm. Yeah. It's funny because I kind of know what you guys are going for with that, but like for me, it's like I I I like to like I really respect people, but also especially men who are really doing the work. Like when I see a man who's like willing to show up, own their shit, be vulnerable, be authentic, like do healing work, be able to take responsibility for their lives. Like that for me is, I have mad respect for men like that, because they're so few, they're so rare. It's like it's
Mm.
like saying, be uncommon, being uncommon amongst uncommon men, right? It's like something like that. It's like, man, that's so uncommon for men to just be doing the work, but men who are really like uh like heart centered and like badass, like still, like that for me, I really have so much respect. So I guess it comes down to a respect thing for me. It's like, what kind of men do I respect? It's the men who are like super authentic, super willing to
Mm.
like go against the grain, because it takes a lot of courage to do this type of work, because like you were saying, it goes against everything that we're taught. It's, as a man, it's like you're you're like gay, or so quit being a girl. You hear that from a very young age, like you're such a sissy, you don't be a
Yeah.
pussy. And it's like, that's what sensitivity is. That's what vulnerability means. That's what,
Yeah.
like emotions essentially mean in this culture. So I'm like, man, if somebody can break through that, or just like, despite all that, show up, I'm like, yeah, like that's the dude that I want to know. That's the dude that I want to, like roll with.
Yeah.
That's for me. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like business, making tons of money, that's hard. I'm an entrepreneur right now, and I'm like, man, this shit is hard too. It's like it's really hard to be successful financially, but that's not as hard to me. Like if I think about it collectively, that is not as hard than somebody who really knows their emotions. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's yeah. So that's I respect men who, and of course I want money and all that and stuff too. But it's like so many men are rich and unhappy, and in the end, that's not gonna matter that you're rich. It's the unhappy part that's really you're gonna be like, oh fuck,
Right.
shit, I should have
Right.
done this before, or like, what do I do now? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Thanks for saying that too. I think a lot of what we like to, um, at least
like
uh,
encourage.
encourage here is a lot of that preventative care in
Hmm.
our mental and emotional well-being, right?
Hmm.
Like so much of whatever the work is, right? And I'm actually curious to dive into what that means, but also
Hmm.
just introspecting and learning about ourselves. We don't do so until we hit a point of, you know, something that is tangible. Oh,
Yeah.
I was divorced.
Right.
I got fired. I
Yeah.
all of a
A
sudden
freaking
gained a lot
pandemic
of
hit.
weight.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
right. So there's like external circumstances that I think is very natural for humans to
Mm,
live about. I almost feel like that type of pain is necessary in some way to raise
for
awareness,
sure.
right? So a lot of ways this
Yeah.
pandemic was almost a necessity for a lot of people to wake up and,
Hmm.
really
100%.
start to take that time for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting because then the next step after waking up is like all of the discomfort and overwhelm and being lost and not knowing what to do and
Yeah.
and so
Yeah, you
that's
don't tell them
where.
that part. No, don't tell them that part. That's gonna make them
Yeah.
run
Yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's totally true.
But
It's like just the
yeah,
beginning, right?
totally.
Yeah.
Uh, and so how does that apply to your life in that, like,
Mm,
what was your journey actually going into, exploring and starting to do the work? Um,
mm.
and then if you can identify a little bit of like what the work is for you or what that means
Sure.
as
Yeah. No,
well.
those are great questions. Um, Yeah, I grew up. I had a lot of pain. That's definitely what catalyzed it as well. So you're talking about divorce or relationships or jobs and all that, like crises happening, and that's definitely the case. I see that with a lot of people, that bringing them onto to this path. But I was in a lot of pain. I think very confusing childhood, parents, immigrants, uneducated, typical kind of Asian family, lack not good communication, some physical abuse, just like like a lot of emotional stuff. Like
Right.
financially, we were okay. We were lower middle class, but we were okay. Never thought about finances. We never had problems with eating, food. Like that's but it was like the emotional stuff that I never really got from my parents, and I didn't know how to make sense of that. I didn't know what to make of that growing up. I was like really unmotivated in school. I got into drugs, hung out with, started hanging out with people getting in trouble. Like I was just acting out. yeah, I was in a lot of pain, a lot of conflict, inner conflict, and I feel lucky that I loved psychology, like I said. So I took my first psychology class, and I was like, whoa, this is different. Like in high school, this was like junior year or something. It's a shitty class. Like the professor, it was my tennis coach that taught it, and I was just like, it kind of sucked, but I noticed that it was different, and so I just majored in psychology after that, and kind of had a turning point where I kind of left the drugs for the most part, and left the troubled life, um, and yeah, I was not in touch with any of my emotions, even though yeah, I was like didn't even know what emotions freaking were. Like I was, yeah. But again, maybe luck or like bad luck. I don't know, but I I ended up going to this grad school by chance. Like I heard about this grad school that's like a Buddhist school. So I was academic. I was a researcher and heard about the school from somebody, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll go check it out. That sounds good. I was going to get my PhD in clinical psychology, but decided I'm going to get this master's first in like humanistic existential psychology. That's what it was, and it's a super radical school. Like I didn't know, hadn't encountered anything like it, but it was a school that kind of forced me to understand who I was, and through experience. Like you jump in the deep end, and the story I always tell is like I was, um, in a class in a group. It was a group dynamics class, first semester, and sitting in this circle with like I don't know 10 other people, all training to be counselors, and we were supposed to talk about our feelings. There was some reading about it, like okay, this is how you talk about your feelings and do I statements, and then it was just like go. So we get into class and it's just like, all right, now we're just going to sit around and talk about our feelings. You can't talk about your thoughts. There's a lot of you can't know this, know this. You could only say I feel this. And I sat there like freaking out. I was just like, what the like, and my body was
Yeah.
like becoming overwhelmed, and I got super anxious. I had a panic attack, and it's like, oh my god! But I was like through being in that environment for 3.5 years. I mean, I got it pretty quick. I was doing a lot of radical stuff. I was like, some of our classes, like you touch other people's hearts, and you do meditations on like the heart and like genital areas, and like it's like learning about basically what it means to be human. That was the
Yeah.
whole idea of the program. So 4 levels of being human. We're physical beings. We're sexual, I guess five, but sexual, emotional, mental, spiritual. You hear this a lot now. At the time, this was 15, I don't know, 12 years ago. It was radical for me, and I was like,
Right.
okay, but it helped me gain a framework to understand myself. So that class with the genitals, it's like I'm a sexual being. I was like, oh, okay. Like I never even thought that this was okay, but this such is the nature of radical kind of westernized spiritual and psychology. It's like that's I got like a dose of the western side of stuff. So that really benefited me in the end, and started doing therapy a lot, and dove into that like super intensely, um, and yeah, I was meditating. Yeah, just did a lot of different types of that kind of stuff: meditation, healing work, therapy, uh, like kind of the new age spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
This is all in the Bay Area, San Francisco, where that's like prolific, and it's like the sexual revolution too, or the all that. So it was a really radical place, and I was there for 11 years, um, and yeah, I mean that I'll say that all that inner work, or we can talk about the work, but like therapy and healing and learning about myself really was to get me to a place where um, I could feel somewhat stable. I think the big part for me was feeling emotionally stable enough to
Mm-hmm.
like live from a place in my life where I can uh, feel, I guess,
Yeah.
feel fulfilled, have fulfilling relationships, have fulfilling career, have fulfilling everything. Um, and and yeah, it really gave me the tools too to be able to do that. So I feel lucky, that I mean, I dove in, I did it maximally. Like, I am the kind of person that's like 100%. I go in too deep and then I try to learn how to swim, like that seems to be my life. And so I kind of did it myself, but yeah, I feel lucky that I'm where I'm at now and that I have the tools and that I can now like help people with it. Um, so yeah, does
Yeah.
that answer that part?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I hear that there's a lot of the um curiosity in uh how to navigate your inner world so that you can
Yeah.
be in a stable place to then flourish in doing bigger things like outside of us, and
Hmm.
living out a bigger purpose. And I think we can definitely get into the more spiritual side of things as well, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, because I was going to mention that this is such a it's interesting as I've been on this journey, like not
Mm,
thinking about these bigger, more ethereal things, right? Like, oh, get the job, get the house, get the car,
mm,
like, marry a Chinese girl, like,
mhm.
and then but then not even know how to have sex with her, like what the heck, like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but
Yeah.
then so anyway, all these like things to to um create a physical security, but
Mm,
there wasn't as much of this
mm.
emotional security, right? This
Yeah.
resiliency,
Totally.
this stability, and
Right.
um, and
Yeah.
so what I hear was that there was a lot of what you were building in you know uh, especially in context of all the pain that you were mentioning
Hmm.
before, because that was a question that was coming up, was like, what do you feel like you were seeking,
Uh,
by doing this work? what
it's a good
what
question.
was the work for, you know
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's I always so even before psychology, I always wanted to be myself. I don't know why. That was the like anthem of my life. And growing up, that's what I hated my parents for. It was like I just want to be like, why don't you understand me? Like, I kind of deep down knew who I was, but like I wasn't seen, so that created a lot of pain, a lot of. But like my whole life was about like I need to be myself,
Hmm.
and like and I have to. Like I didn't have a choice. Like it was interesting, and so I never thought about, and there's like reasons why, my upbringing and all this stuff, but like I never thought about money. I never thought about like uh, uh, my whole mission, and what I always talk to my friends about is like, yeah, just like, what are you passionate about? Like, what do you love? Like, looking around at all my peers in school, I was like, why does nobody really care about what they're learning? And I'm like,
Yeah.
but like my mission was always like learn about who I am and be that in the world and express it. So that's really, I think, what drew me to psychology in the end was like,
Yeah.
how can I, how, actually, first it was what's wrong with me. I think that's kind of how we always start off on this journey. It's like, fuck, what the fuck is wrong with me?
Right.
I need to change myself. I need to fix myself. So I use psychology to try to do that. But after a while, it was like, oh, okay. Like I did. It's not that there's anything wrong with me. I just like wasn't expressing myself. I wasn't expressing my emotions. I was suppressing. I was my family. All these different things came up, and it's like it wasn't. There's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yeah, the journey of the self. That's really what I look at it as, and I think deep down, there's probably just some. I don't know where it came from, but it was like I knew that this is what's most important in life. Like it, like in the end, it's more important to have lived your life in a way that you feel complete, whole, fulfilled, like
Mm-hmm.
authentic. Um, and yeah, in some ways it might just be because I like to be the what do you call it, the black sheep, or like the person who does the opposite. So it's like this whole culture is about,
Right.
commercial stuff and materials. And I was like, no, this is wrong.
Right.
It's like, this is not the road to happiness. Um, so yeah, I don't really know what it was in the end that kind of was the through line, except for that, my whole life that was kind of carrying me. And yeah, I mean, it was rough, dude. Like, you're talking about the shit
Yeah.
that comes up, dude. It was dark. My life was
Mm.
fucking dark as hell. Like, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I would not. But like, I know what's on the other side, and so I don't know if I just cut out there, but yeah, I wouldn't want that for anybody. And I know that in the end, that's what's going to be most rewarding. Um, and I've worked with people. I worked in hospice. I worked with people who lost their family members. So I actually literally worked with people who died, and still I can hold my truth like firmly that this is the most fucking important thing. It only affirmed it. Like, so many people die and they're like, oh fuck, and they have terrible deaths. Some people have this really beautiful death, like, and they didn't live their life authentically, but somehow at the very end, it's just like, oh, like things open up and like they clear up all their karma. It's really interesting. But some people also struggle, and they really,
Yeah.
all the shit that they didn't deal with in their life catches up with them. And so, I kind of knew that. And I think we all kind of know that, to be honest.
I really love that you are coming from this place where you've had this work with you've been working with other people in your therapy practice, and you
Hmm.
did the men's work and all this, and so much to go into too. I Because I joined my own men's group, and that was a whole experience for me, like getting
Hmm.
really uncomfortable. But I did want to like explore the the purpose side of things, and
Hmm.
spirituality, and in
Hmm.
that, as I know that that's a lot of
Totally.
work that you want to focus on as well.
Yeah.
And um and because a lot of what I'm hearing too in this work,
Hmm.
for myself, is that a lot of the the toxic side of masculinity,
Hmm.
again, masculinity is not the toxic thing, it's
Hmm.
this the environment that creates the toxicity,
Hmm.
is a lack of purpose. It's a lack
Hmm.
of living towards something bigger than yourself,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
having a sense of value in that way, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I know that that's what created a lot of my own toxicity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just living willy nilly, just expecting life to just happen for me and to
Hmm.
me, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's been, yeah. So for me, it's been interesting to like, you know, to do things with more intentionality. Of course, there's so many other things that go into that, but
Right.
what is, I guess, like, yeah, what are you working on towards that? Because I know that now you're finding this accumulation of your life and all the work that you've done, all the training you've
Hmm.
done, and now exploring and helping others find their own sense of purpose. Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, maybe just tell us more about how you might go about facilitating that process. Yes, that's a big
um,
question, but yeah.
that is a big question. I think the starting point is always to do the work. I guess I didn't say what the work is, but it's like starting to investigate who you are, because that's the, the whole toxic thing, the whole not living, it all comes down to not knowing who you are, not having access to your self, your authenticity, your truth, your emotions, and so you're living a lot of people are living their lives without listening to that, without being aware of that. And that thing may be like giving you signals and telling you this and that, but like you're not able to even hear it. You're not even able to
Mm,
listen to it, but it comes up, right? In these little symptoms that we call mental illness, or like some physical ailment or something happens, you know, like that's your psyche. That's like your soul saying, hey, like you're off here. Like something's not right, you know? And so that's yeah, it's so interesting. I'm trying to, you know, for a lot of men, especially in Asian men, I think like it's even doubly like difficult because not only are we men in this society that tells us, you know, don't don't like feel don't have emotions or you know just like man up and just you know be successful and don't, you know like all like there's a lot of shoulds for men. On top of that, being Asian is like what like your parents you know it's like you're in a little smaller box, you know, and even
Yeah.
more emotionally suppressed, even more like just make money, just do things these, you know, fucking doctor, lawyer, whatever, right? So it's like man, Asian men. So just thinking about that, I'm like I guess there's no way to, you know, you don't get there until you get there, like you were saying, like something happens in your life and then you kind of wake up. Maybe it's this pandemic too, but yeah, it really starts with like starting to wonder, starting to investigate, starting to be curious, and starting to actually like this is big, actually caring about yourself enough to
Mm.
want something better for your life, to want something better for you. You know, if you have family, kids, like, yeah, sure, make sure they're taken care of, right? Make sure you can work something out, maybe with your, but like start doing this work. Trust me, they're going to be so much happier. You're going to be happier. Your family's going to be happier. It's like I was doing going to these retreats, right? These men's retreats, like probably like 25% of the men there was like 250 men at this retreat that I went to last year, maybe a couple of years ago. Like 25% of them, it's like their girlfriends tell them to go. Like, you need
Right,
this.
right,
They
right.
saw it on Instagram. They saw this group on social media and saw these men crying, like all these emotional relief. They're like, you need to go. The guy's like, what are you talking about? And like,
Right.
the girlfriend's like, fucking go. I'm going to pay for you. And these guys come to these retreats and they're like, oh, my girlfriend made me. At the beginning, they're like, you know, like, and but then by the end, they're just like so open and relaxed and fluid, like their emotions, they're just free. And they're like,
Mm.
man, my girlfriend's going to be so happy. I'm like, oh, and that just hits me here, you know, hits me in the heart. I'm like,
Right.
wow, and I feel that too when I see men who show up. I'm like, oh yes, you know, like
Yeah.
the men's group, and
Yeah.
you know how it is. Like there's something so nourishing about being in circles with other men who open up, and
Yeah.
it releases something in us too. It's just like, oh man, it gives us permission, but it's like this resource that we just haven't had in our lives, and so
Yeah.
um yeah, I forgot what your question was, but yeah, so I guess purpose, right? So purpose is a feeling. It's related to all that because once you start doing that, you live, your life changes, who you are changes, right? The people you want to hang out with changes. The ways that you treat people, the ways that you're treated change. Like when you change your relationship to yourself, to your emotions, to these thoughts, these beliefs, these like negative experiences that might have happened to you, when you transform that, your life changes. Your life transforms as well. So, you know, this whole idea of purpose, it's like, yeah, purpose, we think of purpose as this like concrete one dimensional thing when it's really like 5D. It's like it's who you are and you can create your life, and as you start to heal and change and grow and like become more self-aware, your life will also follow suit, you know, like it's just how it is. I mean, anybody and everybody knows this. You've gone through a deep transformation on some level, right? Some insight you've had, it changes your life, right? It's even like working out, right? Like you work out, you get bigger, it's like, oh, you get more confident, you know, you feel more testosterone in your body, or like you able to talk to women, or you talk more confidently in the conference room, whatever it is, right? Like you change something in your life, it changes other areas, and emotions are like we said, and they have a role to play in everything, you know, relationships, career,
Yeah.
like, literally everything. So change your emotions, you change your life, you know. So yeah, that's I guess breaking down purpose a little bit. And yeah, I mean, take action for sure. Like create your life and
Right,
take
right.
action, and follow the systems and learn the systems that you need to be successful in whatever craft you want to do. But yeah, doing the inner work is really going to help get you there.
Yeah, and I love that because I, you know, obviously biased because of experiencing it for myself of the importance of all this, but like it is the it is something I didn't recognize before, you know,
Hmm.
and uh what I wanted to also say was that a lot of this talk about purpose or all these like
Hmm.
bigger things, you know, living our best life and showing up the best for our other like friends and family and all these things like can't be done if we're still having some, you know, insecurity internally,
Hmm.
right? Unawareness of our emotions or
Hmm.
how we're living about our life,
Hmm.
um, what kind of ripple effects that has. You know, if we're not even aware of that, we're not going to be able to make changes.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and I know that that's shown up for me subconsciously, where I've regrettably hurt a lot of people around me, my,
Mm.
you know, ex girlfriends and
Hmm.
um, friends, where I was not able to like own up my emotions, you
Mm.
know, not
Hmm.
even able to identify it sometimes,
For sure.
and then like being in like conflict even within myself, and we all know that that's not attractive as a
Mm.
person when they're like they don't know what they want, right?
Yeah.
And it comes from have awareness of emotions, and that's what it
Mm.
starts with. So I really
Hmm.
appreciate that because that is that foundation to then it's a building block to then start exploring our purpose, and you
Hmm.
know we need that like foundation here.
Hmm.
So I guess like having all that said, like how do you go about helping people with that then? I know that you're, you know, you said you're not a therapist anymore, but you're transitioning into more coaching, right?
Hmm.
And group work. What,
Hmm.
maybe tell us about like what you plan to do to like address this for people.
Yeah. You know, I feel a responsibility actually, to
Yeah.
like bring this to the Asian community. You know, it's like, man, like, yeah, most people are not educated around this, but especially Asian folks. And so, you know, it's like, how can I make this translatable? How can I make it accessible, understandable? That's kind of one of my missions right now. And hold space because it's like, yeah, I fucking get it. You know, like
Yeah.
this is hard, and growing up with Asian families, Asian immigrant parents, it's like, whoa, you know, that's not
They
talked about in mental
never
health
held that
enough.
space for us. Yeah.
They never held that
Right.
space. They never had that space held for them, you know? So, and so on, like just
Yeah.
generations of that. So, like, I really feel like called to do that. Um, I guess, I guess, yeah. I see a lot of resiliency in the Asian community as well. So, you know, like Asian Hustle Network, right? It's like, damn, there are in this group badass Asians all over. So it's like allowing, how do I say this? Because not everybody is wants to like be like me. Not everybody wants to like
Yeah.
dive into the deepest core of their being to like get enlightened, or you know, like that's not what people want. People just want more of more fulfillment, more ease, more, you know. So it's like, going from it, I think it's like polishing a rock maybe. So it's like if you're a rock, you're kind of you just might need a little bit of polishing, but to polish rock, you got to go through the tumbler. I don't know if you know anything about that. I don't know too much about it, but like you put like this just jagged kind of like ugly rock, and you could put it in a rock tumbler, and you just like spin this little thing, and like it just smooths it out. So I think a lot of Asian folks, it's like they're doing amazing stuff and they're pretty solid. I mean, there are a lot of Asian people suffering and really having a hard time with mental health too. So, um, but yeah, it's like just this one area, these emotions. And I don't mean that in a light way. It's a big deal, but but helping that become easier, and
Yeah,
more navigable and just like, um, yeah, I really want to help with that. And like there's a lot of different avenues, like you're saying, that emotions touch, right? Like relationships or career, or family. Like I really, for me, purpose, that word, I hate using that word because it's like, what does that even mean, right? But like,
sure.
purpose has always been my thing. It's like I want to live my life in total alignment with who I am. I have to first discover. So that's something that I was working on that before I switched to the Asian population. But now that I've switched, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start that up again and like kind of revamp it for Asian men especially. Um, so because yeah, that feels like a transition that's happening. I mean, not I was doing this before COVID, but now that COVID's happening, it's like so many people are trying to figure out what to do next. Like
Yeah,
they have this time, they have this freedom, maybe working remotely, or they realize they don't even want to work their
yeah,
job, their previous job, and they realize how unhappy and unfulfilling it actually was, and they were burnt out, and like now they're like feeling much
exactly.
like more freedom and
Yeah,
relaxation in their body, and they realize how valuable that is. So I'm like, okay, this is out there, and I can really help men do this transition and navigate it, and also really get the tools to navigate it, like
hmm,
long term, because it's a long journey purpose. And so yeah, I think that's where things are headed, so
love that.
um, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's why I've been excited to have you on here and to be this resource for people, because
Mm,
I do see that there is, especially now with COVID and everything, that there is a more of an awareness of a need around this now, right? And
right.
people are becoming conscious about mental health as a just as a overall health, and that it's
Hmm.
not a mental illness. It's not like there's
Hmm.
anything wrong with you to prioritize your mental health. It's just
Yeah.
part of your health in general. It's just like maintaining your physical health, right?
Hmm.
And and that's
Hmm.
important for us to show up best for, ultimately, for the people around us, for the ones we love and care about.
Hmm.
And so there is
Yeah.
a need for that, and I think it's just like, how do you make it translatable or accessible or relevant? And I love that that's what part of your mission too, because
Yeah.
there are these like bigger, especially like in psychology and spirituality, maybe these things that are hard to connect with,
Hmm.
right? And then to like bring that back down to the people, like
Hmm.
translating
Hmm.
that in a way that allows us to relate and apply it for our life. I think that's going to be super
Yeah.
helpful, because again, we see the need. I think it's just now like, how do we do it, or like how,
Mm.
like what can we do
Hmm.
to maintain our mental health and well-being. So
Yeah. Totally.
yes, I love this conversation, and I wanted to keep this short. We're coming up on the hour here. We could
Mm.
totally keep going into this
Yeah.
stuff,
Totally.
but for someone who is listening, then like, what would you share as, based on all what we've talked about here, what
Mm.
is something they can take away, for them to, um, at least at least take a step towards prioritizing their mental health, or
Hmm.
um, or tapping into their emotions, or what that might look like what would you kind of suggest as a good starting point?
Mm. That's a good question. Hmm. You know, yeah, I feel the roadblock. I feel the roadblock of this culture, Asian culture, patriarchy, all this stuff that capital, all this stuff that's like that makes mental illness, like you were saying, something bad and wrong, like something's
Yeah,
wrong with you, and people can't get over that hump to like realize that, like you or like me, like it's just part of life. Like we all
yeah,
have these issues, and it's there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong. That's actually why I left the mental health space and therapy, was because like, whoa, I was working in residential treatment centers with teens at one point, and these are kids who want to kill themselves. These are kids who are addicted to substances. These are kids who like eating just like really like last resort shit. Their parents force them to go there. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be rough. These kids are gonna, and yeah, they're suffering and they're in pain. But man, when I saw these kids, I was like, damn, these kids are amazing. These are like some of the most creative, bright, like I mean, not all of them, but like a lot of them are like the outcasts of society, because like they're different. And why? Because they're queer or gay or just like psychologically minded. They're like really creative and artistic, and sure, they've gone through a lot, but it's like we're backwards here. Like like we're backwards um, in our society by thinking that because somebody is emotional, because somebody is depressed, because somebody's anxious, there's something wrong with them, and that they need to go to a doctor, or they need,
yeah,
and it's like, I, it's for I don't know how to make this jump, but for me, it's the opposite. It's like every single person I've worked with who has anxiety, depression, whatever. It's like when we start talking about it, when we start diving into it, when I start getting to know them, I'm like, whoa, like this person is amazing. And like whatever they thought was wrong is actually a doorway into something deeper, more truer, more creative, more alive, more like beautiful about this human being that they've had to
yeah,
shut down, like that they've had to
mm,
push aside because they were told it was bad or wrong, or it's you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
there's no stigma for me. It's actually the opposite. It's actually that like whatever, going back to the metaphor about the symptoms, right? So like something is off, and your body, your like something in your emotions, something in your psyche is going to let you know. So you're not living listening to yourself. You're not living honoring some parts of your emotions that you need to like like, yeah.
yeah,
So trusting that, and I know that it's hard to just take what I say probably and be like, oh, I accept myself and there's nothing wrong. But like, just hopefully this starts to kind of like, trickle in. And I would even say to listeners, like, hey, don't even think about it too much. It's just like feel what I'm saying, like feel it.
right,
And
right,
like, because it's I'm sure it's touching somebody out there and being like, oh, okay. And whatever it's touching, that's what's important to start listening to. That's
mm,
deep underneath all that, those conditioned thoughts and messages. It's like, yeah.
yeah. No, love that. Yeah, I heard a few. Yeah, I heard a few takeaways, and first it's really uh, uh, letting go of the judgments that we might have, or that judgments that might have been projected onto us, through us, right? Of other people with mental illnesses or
Yeah.
conditions,
Yeah.
and then
Actually,
even
can I say
those who are
this thing?
just
This
prioritizing. Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah,
what's
sure.
coming up as like a final thing. I appreciate. I wanted to hear what you were saying, but this comes up. This keeps coming up, which is, you have a tech background. There might be people here who have tech background. Um, think of it. I really think of the psyche and like our emotions, our mind, everything as like a system. And that's literally how I learned it. It's called psychodynamics. So it's like a dynamic, energetic system. So the way I look at it is really like a car. It's It's like I feel like I'm a mechanic sometimes because it's like I can see where things are off. So the reason why I bring that up is because like the things that happen to us, to you, to whomever, that are creating these imbalances, that are creating these symptoms, or creating these things in our lives that we're like, what the fuck is wrong here? It's because something is off. But usually it's not like you're wrong. You know, it's not like there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with the system, right? So you can even look at it from a little bit of an impersonal perspective, but it's easier said than done because you're diving into emotions, you're diving into your child, you're diving into these experiences, so it brings stuff up and it's hard. But the bottom line, I mean, I can have this perspective because I've been in this so long and I can look at it from a little bit of a distance from all the experience and everything, but like it really is just something is off. And what can you do to tweak it? What can you do to get it right? But the answer is not like more working out, or I mean, maybe for some people, or like, you know, using some external thing. It's like diving in, getting in there, you know, switching out this pipe or switching out this, you know, looking at these beliefs, looking where they come from, and like switching them with a more
Mm,
positive belief, or you know, like dealing with the trauma that you didn't deal with when you were, you know, that
hmm
happened when you were younger, or, you know, like that, whatever is in your system that is causing these imbalances, that are causing these
hmm
symptoms. It's like, that's all you're doing is working that shit out, you know? So,
Yeah, that's super
mhm,
cool analogy. Yeah, and because I'm not a mechanic, but there's obviously many things that affect each other in how a car works, right? And so
for sure.
really looking at like replacing that piece or that part that will function better, and that will have a ripple effect about the whole performance of
Exactly.
the car. So
Yeah.
that's same with software, same with computers,
Okay.
and um yeah, so that's
Exactly.
super cool. And um again, I guess what I hear more of this takeaway too is identifying what that part is,
Hmm.
using your emotions as an antenna, as another source of data for yourself
Hmm.
to understand your behaviors, understand your impact on the people around you, understand your own
Hmm.
performance in
Hmm.
work, your own productivity, right? what is
Yeah.
what is that like part that you
Mm.
can um become curious about,
Yeah.
and then at the same time releasing the judgment you might have with other people about doing the work, about
Mm.
exploring themselves, right? I know for myself that that's advice that I would take for myself too. Is I grew up with a lot of judgments about other people, and that's
Hmm.
what created the resistance for me to
Mm.
do my own work, you know and so
Yeah.
it sounds really, really detaching that. And I think that that sounds like what I hear from what you were saying is a good first step, or kind of good takeaway, um, for us here, is
Mm.
just becoming curious. Yeah.
Yeah, becoming curious. Yeah, and yeah, just being like, okay, yeah, it's hard. The conditioning is really hard. You know, it's there.
Yeah.
Like I you know, just to reach out for help, even just to acknowledge that there might be
Totally.
something that's off. But you know, going back to the very beginning, it's like being badass. It's a strength to want to have a better life, to
Right.
want to do
Right.
something better for yourself. And the ways to do that is you have to address it. You do. You have to address these things.
Mm-hmm.
And deep down, we all know it. I'm 100% sure that, like, deep down, we all know what the thing is, you know, that we need to
Yeah.
address.
Yeah.
But we're just
Totally.
not willing to admit it. We're not willing to, you know, like, I find that so fascinating that so many people aren't doing the work, but yet
Yeah.
you get them to start talking. I don't even have to pry. It's just like it just comes out, and it's because it's because deep down everybody wants. You all want freedom. You all want to
Mm-hmm.
feel whole. You all want to, you know, we all want that. And when we're not feeling that, it really gets us down. It really causes a lot of this. It's like we know it. We know what it is because everything in our lives kind of depends on it, really. So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks. Yeah, this was great, man.
Yeah, for sure. I will also make a plug for you. Like a good first step for anybody who is curious is really finding that space to explore yourself, and especially in the group of other men, especially other Asian identifying men. And so, yeah, I know you have your own group and you're facilitating a men's group for that. You want to share how people can reach out and connect with
Sure.
that?
Yeah, the men's group I run, it's for Asians, like you said, and yeah, that happens the first and third Wednesdays of every month. Um, and yeah, you can find out everything from my Instagram. So at the Asian Coach, and just in the links there. I don't have a website yet, but yeah, that's really just to have a place to connect, come share a little bit of what's real for you, or a lot if you want. Um, it's just checking in, just being like, hey, what's going on for me is this, and I could use support around this, and just sharing it. It's not like anybody's going to change or fix or shame. It's just like just getting it out there and having other
Mm-hmm.
people hear it. It shifts something. It makes you feel more relief. So that's what I would say about that. And then yeah, and then I do have a private Facebook group that I just started. I don't know how long it's going to take to get it really going, but that's the mission, to translate mental health. It's like I want mental health to really,
Mm-hmm.
for the Asian community, to work. So yeah, that's Asians healing and making an impact, and that's all on my Instagram. And yeah, and then some group coaching
Awesome.
courses coming up, but I'm not really ready to launch them yet. So yeah,
Yeah. Love it. Love it. I love that you're in this work, and again, it's such a needed thing. I know would have like loved this growing up, or maybe
totally.
not have loved it, but I totally would have needed it for sure.
Yeah,
But
it's a good way to put it.
so yeah, I really appreciate you at least even just offering this space, and knowing that
Hmm.
that's a resource for people. So
Hmm.
I'll share all the links in the description, and thank you for coming on here, man.
Mm.
It's been such a cool exploration of getting to know your story behind all this too. So
Yeah, yeah, totally, man. I mean, happy to share, and yeah, I felt like there were a lot of times where it was like, whoa, there's a lot of offshoots here, but yeah, you kept it hunkered down. It was good. I felt like we talked about a lot of good stuff there. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on.